Okay, today we're going to talk about pretty much the different divisions of the ANS right here, of the autonomic nervous system. It breaks up into the way I'm going to do it right now is actually go like this. So we have the sympathetic, which I'm going to just do as SNS, sympathetic nervous system. And then we'll do parasympathetic nervous system, which will just be PNS. Okay, so we're going to compare and contrast kind of different things with each of these, and I'll just write them here. So where the sympathetic nervous system originates is the CNS origin, where it originates from the central nervous system, is the lateral horn of the spinal cord segments T1 all the way down to L2 or L3, just around there. Cool. And how it looks is within, so you have your kind of vertebral column, there's your head. So you have right here, you have like C1 through C7, and then you have T1 that starts right here. And then you go into your lumbar and then sacral divisions. So it goes from here all the way down to like L1 or L2. This is your lumbar and this is your sacral regions. Okay, so I'll erase that here. Awesome. So they come out of that lateral horn, which is when you have it like this. This is your inside your spinal cord. These are your lateral horns. This is where they're coming out of. Okay. So you have these different ganglia. So you have like it right here, right? Or even what we just had, which I'll just quickly redraw really bad, just like that. You have different nerves or neurons that will go through sympathetic chain ganglia, which are just right next to the vertebral column or spinal column. And then you have other ones that are called collateral spinal or collateral ganglia, which are just a little bit further down the spinal column. The neurotransmitters that your sympathetic nervous system will release depend on which ones we're talking about, because they're composed of two different neurons. It's a two neuron system, which actually is the same for both. Two neuron system. And this is what it generally looks like for sympathetic nervous system. So the first is the preganglionic neuron. So I'm just going to do pre right here. And it's myelinated. So we can just go like this. So it's a myelinated neuron. And then it'll synapse at either the collateral ganglia or either the sympathetic chain ganglia, or if it's the adrenal medulla, it does something else, which we can show here. But so synapse with another, with a post-ganglionic neuron. And this one is not myelinated, so I'm not going to show that there. And then it'll synapse with we'll go here to the effector. What you have on this post-ganglionic neuron, at that binding site in the synapse here, you have N2 receptors. The preganglionic neurons release acetylcholine right here, and N2 is a cholinergic receptor, so it binds to ACH, and acetylcholine will act as pretty much, you hit this channel right here, and it'll act as a ligand right there that'll allow it to be open and let sodium, whatever, to go in so it can have an action potential there, or graded potentials. On the postganglionic neuron, it'll release, typically that you'll see is norepinephrine, which we can do with green. So this one's ACH, and this one here is norepinephrine. And let's see. So there's different effectors on each for your sympathetic chain, which are going to be your alpha and beta. So let's do like alpha right here, or I'll do black. So you have these different alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1, beta 2, beta 3 right here. And these ones like to bind with norepinephrine or other cholinergic receptors. Actually, sorry, no, it won't. They're adrenergic receptors, and norepinephrine is an adrenergic, or it's a catecholamine, which includes epinephrine, norepinephrine, and then dopamine. So this is typically what it looks like for a normal somatic or sympathetic neuron or system. So the pre is myelinated. It will synapse at like the collateral ganglion or the sympathetic chain ganglia, and then it'll release acetylcholine. That'll bind to an N2 receptor, and then it'll go to the postganglionic neuron, and then it'll release norepinephrine, which will bind to one of these receptors. They're called adrenergic receptors, and then that'll cause the effector to do whatever it needs to. Cool. There's also, it's a little bit different, so I can almost do copy and paste right here. Here's an exception for action so it looks the same right here. And then you have your N2 right here on your post. But instead of releasing norepinephrine, it will release, for at least your generalized sweat glands. So generalized sweat glands. It will release acetylcholine, and it'll have these M1 receptors. So M1, like M3, I think. It'll just have some sort of M receptor that likes to do with it's like it's like N2 has it has M right here. So it has an M2 receptor there. Cool. Yeah, and this will pick up on the acetylcholine, so it'll release this acetylcholine, and then it'll bind to the M2 receptors for that. And then there's it's a little bit different for your adrenal medulla. It just goes straight to the adrenal medulla. I'm not sure how to draw that. Let's just say adrenal medulla. And then this one just releases the acetylcholine like this. And then the adrenal medulla has the N2. And then it releases into the blood epinephrine. Let's just say blood. Okay. So this is kind of how it's a little bit different with sympathetic. So it doesn't just use acetylcholine. Its neurotransmitters are acetylcholine and postganglionic neurons release epinephrine, except for your sweat glands right here, generalized sweat glands, and some blood vessels. And then the adrenal medulla releases epinephrine and norepinephrine into the blood instead of just like that, instead of into an effector like that. Actions for sympathetic are fight. I'm just going to do the Fs: fight, flight, and flee response. So typically you'll see an increased heart rate, blood pressure, and respiration. You'll see pupil dilation as well. Bronchial dilation as well, so you can breathe more. And then increased blood flow to cardiac and skeletal muscles. You'll even see vasoconstriction and most blood vessels and then generalized sweating. Cool. Now with your parasympathetic, right here, your CNS origin, your preganglionic neurons are going to go from the brainstem and the sacral region of the spinal cord. Something that's cool with your PNS, parasympathetic nervous system, it has longer preganglionic neurons. And again, let's just go like this. They're myelinated. And sorry, this one up here is myelinated too. But they're myelinated. And then their postganglionic neurons really close to their effector. Let's just say organ. Okay. The location of the ganglia. So like in sympathetic, it had the collateral ganglia, sympathetic chain ganglia. Further, it's ganglia. But for the parasympathetic, so let's just do PNS right here. It's called terminal ganglia, which is pretty much just like right here, terminal ganglia, which is very close to the effector by which they innervate. And the pre and post ganglionic neurons are cholinergic, so they both release this acetylcholine. So you have the N2 receptor here as well. But what's different with the effectors on this one for the parasympathetic is that they have muscarinic effectors, which is going to be M1, M2, M3, M4, and M5. Cool. This is what it looks like with your parasympathetic. And its actions are pretty much all having to do with rest and digest. So rest and digest. So it'd have like an opposite effect, right? It'd have like a decreased heart rate and blood pressure. Oops. Blood pressure. It'd have pupil constriction. And I can show you how it kind of works in here. And then increased digestive stuff, like peristalsis and digestive secretions. Let's just do digestion. And then you'll have increased or bronchial constriction. Cool. So pretty much the only similarities that they have between both of them is that they're involuntary. They both use a 2-neuron system to relay from the central nervous system to the effectors, and then the preganglionic neurons are myelinated and the postganglionic neurons are unmyelinated. And that's pretty much like the only similarities. And I guess right here too, between pre and post ganglionic neurons, they release the acetylcholine and have N2 receptors. Let's see, what else? So those are the differences, the number of neurons and the pathway, type of receptors and actions. So now we have cholinergic and adrenic receptors, which we can talk a bit more. So cholinergic receptors. So these are the receptors that will bind to ACH or acetylcholine. And this is going to be your nicotinic, which we abbreviate with N2, and then your muscarinic, which is going to be M1 through M5. Okay. And then you have your adrenergic receptors, which I kind of remember it by like adrenaline, adrenergic. Hopefully I'm spelling that right. And these are going to bind to the catechol. I cannot pronounce this. Catecholamines. This one. So such as norepinephrine, which I'll just do as NE, and epinephrine. And you would I think you would have dopamine as well in there. Dopamine. Which you normally just do D probably. So the receptors that would bind to these are your alpha, 1 and 2. There's only 2 of them. And they're represented with this symbol. And then you have your beta. And you have beta 1 through 3. And they're represented with this, the beta sign. And then you have dopamine 1 and 2. Cool. So these are important for different things. Typically, the rule of thumb is that an even number, so even, is going to be excitatory. And then odd is inhibitory. Okay. So let's, I guess, find a couple of examples for each one. So like for the heart is one of the effectors, right? And the sympathetic pathway. It's got a ton of B1 or beta 1 receptors. Since it's an odd number, it's excitatory. So it's going to be increasing heart rate once it receives that signal from, typically they like it from, for alpha 1, they like norepinephrine. Same with A2, alpha 2. So increased heart rate and then increased force of contraction. Okay. The lung has a lot of B or beta 2. And so if we think of sympathetic, it's typically trying to have things like you're getting attacked by a bear, right? Or being chased. You want like a lot of air. You want to focus less on digesting and to get away from this thing. So it's going to do things to be able to get away and everything. So like increased heart rate, increased breathing, and stuff. So like it makes sense as a B2 receptor, which is going to be inhibitory because it's oh, I flipped these. This is inhibitory, is even. And this is excitatory. So since it's an even number, it's going to be inhibitory. So it's not going to constrict, right? It's going to be doing the opposite of exciting, whatever the effector is. So it's going to be causing or increasing bronchodilation. So you can get more air. Okay. Sweat glands is a little weird. This is one of the ones that has an M1 receptor, which is typically more involved with parasympathetic. But it's an odd, so it's going to be excitatory. When it receives its signal, it's going to be, you're going to sweat. So increased sweat. Okay. Blood vessels, they're going to constrict with alpha 1. So they're going to have some alpha 1 and then alpha 2. Alpha 2, well, actually I think it has M1, but we'll focus on this. We'll have alpha 1. And this will cause it to basically vasoconstrict. Cool. So now we have an example too with how it works with like parasympathetic and sympathetic. So we have the eye, the iris, whatever, the pupil. So you have this here. This is the constrictor. And this has a ton of M3 or it's M1. It's one of those. It's pretty much the odd muscarinic receptors. And then it has the radial thing here, and that constricts to pull and dilate the pupil. And it's got alpha 1 receptors on it. So when this one gets excited, it'll pull and cause constriction or dilation. So cool. So you can send here, so alpha 1, you can send like norepinephrine, and this will basically cause dilation of the pupil. But then if you set over here to this M1 acetylcholine, this will constrict and make the pupil smaller. So you have the different things. So normally the sympathetic could be with this. But that's pretty much kind of the different things that, what the different receptors, what they do, and how the sympathetic and parasympathetic differ from each other. And yeah, that's about it.